New bombshell on the FBI agent removed by Robert Mueller from the Russia investigation. We are now learning that he was the same agent who conducted the interviews with Michael Flynn and also played a critical role in changing former Director James Comey's public language on the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith.
Nice to see you. Good morning to you. Great interview there with those two gentlemen. What a story they have. Yep. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning, everybody. The FBI agent has been identified as Peter Strzok, seen here. He was the second highest ranking official in the counterintelligence division when he reportedly had Comey change his official assessment of Hillary Clinton's email probe from grossly negligent to extremely careless. So what does that change mean? Here's Trey Gowdy from Special Report.
People have the right to assume the people that are investigating them are objective and have not already made up their minds. That's why we need to see the text and we need to interview this special agent. But the Bureau's had a really bad last 18 months, and this makes it worse, frankly.
Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live in Washington for us. Good morning, Catherine.
Thank you, Sandra. Fox News also obtaining this April 2016 memo from Attorney General Loretta Lynch to all department employees, and that would include the FBI, advising them that during an election, politics must play no role in federal investigations. And now key decision makers, from Lynch to FBI Director Comey and a member of Comey's inner circle are under new scrutiny. FBI agent Peter Strzok weighed in on this July 2016 statement where Comey recommended against criminal charges for Clinton's mishandling of classified information. Fox News confirms that Agent Strzok changed Comey's earlier draft about Clinton's emails and her use of an unsecured personal server exclusively for government business from grossly negligent to extremely careless. This is a key change because gross negligence is the standard under the federal statute for prosecution, 18 U.S.C. 793F. The FBI agent was removed by special counsel Robert Mueller last summer for sending anti-Trump texts to his lover, an FBI lawyer. Legal experts say even the appearance of a conflict undercuts the Bureau's work.
It's not good for the FBI, which holds itself up as a paragon of virtue, where there's no political motivations and we just follow the facts, that's all. And everybody knows that's not the case. The FBI is an organization of human beings with political interests, political calculations, and of course that happens.
Separately, Fox News has obtained emails sent by former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn in late December 2016. The records turned over to the special counsel's office show that the Trump transition team knew Flynn was talking to the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak, but the emails we've reviewed show Flynn said the calls were about an upcoming conference on Syria, the murder of a Russian diplomat in Turkey, and scheduling a further conversation not focused on sanctions. And that is the issue that Flynn pled guilty on, lying to the FBI about the substance of that conversation, Sandra.
Catherine Herridge, thank you for your reporting.
You're welcome.
While that's moving, this is moving too. From Capitol Hill now, the House voting to send the tax overhaul bill to the next step, which is a conference, but not without some drama on the floor. Right now, we're waiting a news conference of House Republicans after conservatives in the Freedom Caucus nearly stalled the next step in tax reform. They had some issues last night. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel live on the Hill to break it all down now. Mike, good morning to you. What's the dust up between Republicans now?
Well, a 2-week government funding extension to keep the government up and running from Friday through December 22nd. The House Freedom Caucus, a key group of conservatives, clearly worries about lawmakers making bad decisions that close to Christmas.
Kicking the can down the road is something that Congress continually does. I mean, we have a December 8th date. We've known that for many months, and yet here we are again talking about another short-term deal. For us, having that come due right before Christmas and have the uncertainty of a government shutdown and other aspects that certainly will be reported is just not something that my constituents want.
So their position is an extension to December 30th to get through the Christmas holiday and then come back and tackle those critical year-end fiscal issues.
I said I have no problem between the 22nd and 30th of when people want it. It's only a week difference. So.
We should get an update on the length of that extension shortly from House GOP leaders. Bill.
Good deal, Mike. Is there a sense of desperation, or what are you hearing from Democrats at this moment?
Well, not on the government funding issue. They clearly feel like they have at least some leverage on that front. House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer have accepted an invitation to meet with President Trump and their GOP counterparts at the White House Thursday afternoon. They will clearly bring their wish list with them. But on tax reform, Democrats sound pretty desperate.
This is the end of the road. This health care, the debate on health care is life, death. This is Armageddon. This is a very big deal because you know why? There's really a very hard way to come back from this. They take us further, more deeply into debt. What can you do but raise taxes?
That meeting with the president Thursday afternoon. The government runs out of money Friday. They cannot afford any missteps. Bill?
Indeed. Thank Mike Emanuel watching all that back and forth on the tax deal. Thanks. Sandra has more.
For more on tax reform, let's go to John McCormick, senior writer at the Weekly Standard. He's also a Fox News contributor. Your thoughts with so much changing on this Tuesday morning. John, good morning.
Good morning. I think when someone like Nancy Pelosi says, the sky's going to fall, this is Armageddon, it's a big mistake because at the end of the day, the voters can look themselves, they can look out the window and see whether the sky's going to fall. And come January, if this thing passes before Christmas, we're going to see people's tax withholding change. And for most people, they're going to be better off, something like maybe 7-8%. People who are, making six figures, upper middle class, they might end up paying more if they're in these high tax states, high tax districts. So I don't think Nancy Pelosi really helped her case by putting things in such stark terms.
What do you think is going to be the real problem here when you look at the similarities and the differences between the House and the Senate GOP bills? What is going to be the sticking point?
I think the question will be whether it actually comes through that they already did repeal the individual mandate in Obamacare in the Senate. That was surprising a little bit. I think it'll make it through the House. The question is whether or not some of these Senate moderates will allow that to remain without some other health care legislation to back that up. But really, this all happened very late on Friday night. I don't think the process is very defensible, but they did come to some key agreements in terms of what deductions would be allowed, such as the state and local.
John, I wanted to jump in here because I don't want to forget to ask you this, because you bring up a really important point about how this will all be judged in the end. Let's assume everything happens by Christmas. Everybody gets the great big Christmas present, as the president has called it. How will the success of this be judged? You look at this stock market, and it is unbelievable, already heading to 25,000. It's been making record after record in anticipation of this getting done. Will that be the judge? What will be the ultimate judge of this?
Well, it's called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and people will judge it by how much of a tax cut they got and how much it grows the economy. I do think that a big political and policy mistake was that the Senate Republicans let this Marco Rubio amendment fail in the Senate, which would have given a tax cut to people who are working class. Something like 40-some% of the country doesn't pay income taxes, but they do pay payroll taxes. That means about 15% of every dollar that they earn, when you count the individual contribution and the employer contribution. That's taken out to pay for things like Medicare and Social Security. Now, those people, they're not going to get much of a tax cut. I think it was a big mistake. They could have made the corporate rate 20.94% instead of 20%, given these working class voters who are facing a lot higher costs. And these are people who turned to Trump in 2016. So I think it doesn't make sense on a policy or a political standpoint.
All right, give me a few seconds on each of these because we don't have much time left. But John Conyers, we are being told, is expected to make an announcement from the hospital at any moment this hour. What do you expect to come out of that?
Well, the earlier report today was that he was going to simply say that he was going to retire at the end of his term, not resign. But he does face another allegation this morning, and so I think the pressure continues to build for him to resign. So, we'll have to wait and see.
And Roy Moore, you wrote an article over the weekend about how he's still ahead, even with all the sexual assault allegations. And this morning, an op-ed in the Washington Post, the editorial board there, saying, "Is a Senate seat really worth this?" They start out with a tweet from Trump saying, "We need Republican Roy Moore to win in Alabama." There's renewed support coming from the GOP for him. Your thoughts?
I don't think support for Roy Moore makes sense from a moral or a political standpoint. He's going to be an albatross around the necks of Republicans running in 2018 and in 2020. This Senate seat is Jeff Sessions' Senate seat, so there's only it's up again in 2020. Jeff Sessions won his seat in 2014. So I think that if Donald Trump wants to run alongside Roy Moore for re-election, that's his choice. I think it's a big mistake for several reasons.
John McCormick, senior writer, Weekly Standard. Thank you.
A lot of those issues there would be answered in a moment here. Senior counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, is our guest live in about 20 minutes. So we'll take you to the White House there and we'll get what they're saying on all these matters coming up shortly.
And could get an announcement from the hospital. John Conyers shortly, we are being told. So we'll bring that to you live when we get that.
Also, moments away now from a news conference. House Republicans now hoping to move the tax bill forward among several other issues consuming Washington right now. We'll take you there when we get it. House Speaker Paul Ryan should be out in a matter of moments, Sandra.
Plus a wildfire exploding overnight, forcing thousands from their homes. A live report from the fire line.
And one of our top stories of the day, Special Counsel Robert Mueller moving an FBI agent from the Russia matter because he was biased against President Trump. But what other investigations did he influence first? How are we to understand all of this today from a legal and national standpoint? The Governor Mike Huckabee takes that on next, coming up.
Well, it's not just infuriating, it's unconstitutional because the FBI is not its own government. It's a single agency within the executive branch of our federal government. It's accountable to, among others, the United States Congress, and therefore accountable to voters.
It's 10:15 now, and we are waiting to hear from the embattled Congressman John Conyers, expected to appear on a radio talk show in Detroit any moment now. He will likely make an announcement regarding his own future in Washington, all according to his lawyer now. Conyers facing several allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment. As soon as we learn what he has to say about his own future, we will bring that to you. So stand by out of Detroit, coming up shortly here.
The FBI is out of control, and not just in the Trump investigation, but much more broadly. An agency charged with enforcing the law clearly considers itself above the law, and that's a threat to you and every American, no matter who you voted for.
My friends, this is unacceptable, it's disgusting, and it's unfair.
The latest revelations about the FBI agent removed from the Russia investigation, sparking an uproar as we learn more about his actions. Peter Strzok, a key supervising agent, was kicked off the case after sending anti-Trump messages to his girlfriend. He was in charge of questioning Michael Flynn, and he convinced former FBI Director James Comey to soften the language describing Clinton's conduct from grossly negligent to extremely careless. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee is a Fox News contributor. I'm not so sure your words are going to be any kinder about this FBI agent. Governor Huckabee?
No, they're really not. You know, you need a hazmat suit to get close to the stink of this. It's really something that I think outrages Americans regardless of where they are politically. And let me be fair, Sandra, those of us who play the political game as candidates or consultants or whatever, you know, we want to win. But the average American just wants the game to be played fairly. They want the rules to be applied the same, whether a person is rich or poor, black or white, Democrat, Republican, urban or rural. And what we're seeing here is that the rules do not apply equally. They didn't apply to Hillary Clinton when this same investigator, Peter Strzok, decided to change the language, not saying that it was negligent, but it was just careless. And she gets a pass. On the other hand, Mike Flynn, whose very investigation is now suspect, was it based on a phony dossier that was paid for by the Hillary Clinton and the DNC campaign, he says something to the FBI that's untrue, and he's going down, like my dad would say, a one-egg pudding. Now, the sad part is that this destroys trust that people have in their government. It's not just about the FBI. It's trust in their government, and that's what's really at stake here. It's got to be fixed. Somebody needs to be fired, not just taken off a case.
Governor Huckabee, I want to just tell viewers right now that a radio station in his local area of Detroit is interviewing John Conyers, the congressman who's got multiple sexual misconduct allegations against him currently. We are told by his team that he would be making a statement on this radio show this morning. That interview is going on right now. We will bring you any news of that announcement as it comes. What do you anticipate will come from this, Governor?
I have a hard time believing that he will continue to try to stay in Congress. His health is now in question. What's the point? He's 88 years old. Does he really want to stay with this cloud hanging over him that's really disgusting and embarrassing? I can't imagine that he does. So, you know, who knows? A lot of people will hang on to power. with the last scratch of their fingernails, but I just can't imagine that anyone would think that this is a good idea to stay.
I should let you know you're looking at the interviewer, Mildred Gaddis, there, but he is not there. He is in the hospital doing the interview from his hospital room. So again, we will bring you that announcement as we get it. We are currently listening to that. I want to go back to Mueller's credibility problem, as the Wall Street Journal editorial board put it this morning, Governor Huckabee. The special counsel, they say, is stonewalling Congress and protecting the FBI. Here's a piece of it. While there is no evidence so far of Trump-Russia collusion, House investigators have turned up enough material to suggest that anti-Trump motives may have driven Mr. Comey's FBI investigation. The latest news supports our view that Mr. Mueller is too conflicted to investigate the FBI and should step down in favor of someone more credible. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, I do. And it goes back to the point. People don't want two sets of rules, one for those in power, one for those who aren't. And when the FBI says, we're not going to answer questions of Congress, well, let me ask you something. Sandra, if you get brought in before the FBI, are you going to be able to say, you know, I'm going to take that Peter Strzok rule. I'm going to take the Bob Mueller approach. I'm just not going to answer your calls. I'm not going to answer your letters. I'm not going to answer a summons. I just don't want to talk to you guys. No, it doesn't work like that. And if there's no accountability to the elected representatives of Congress, then we've lost this republic for sure. This is an arrogant and outrageous act of defiance on the part of the highest levels in the FBI, and it's an affront to the good and decent men and women of the FBI who serve out there in the ranks. They don't deserve this. They deserve better leadership, and there needs to be a house cleaning. I hope Jeff Sessions will start it today.
Okay, John Conyers will be endorsing his son to replace him. We are being told has just taken place in that interview. That is all we have at this moment. Governor, your reaction?
Well, my gosh, I mean, what is this, a political kingdom where you just pass the offices down to the next of kin? Why don't we have honest elections? You know, if family members want to run for office, fine, go do it. But this idea that it's going to be passed on, we've got a lot of families who think that it becomes their heirloom, like a piece of jewelry, to hand an office down to the next generation. I find that troubling in a country that's not supposed to operate like that.
All right. We will continue to follow up if there's any news that comes out of that. Meanwhile, I have to ask you about Roy Moore this morning as well, Governor Huckabee. Renewed support coming from the GOP, the president also weighing in. We are just a short time now away from that Alabama special election. Your predictions?
I think Roy Moore is going to win because Doug Jones is such an unacceptable candidate. They have a lot of questions about Roy Moore. I understand that. But, you know, it's down to the fact that as long as Al Franken is in the Senate, as long as you've got Conyers and others who are staying in office, then why not have Roy Moore? First of all, he's denied the charges against him vehemently and categorically. None of this is good. None of us like this idea that people have these clouds over them, but I think he ultimately wins.
All right, so again, John Conyers' son announcing he is endorsing his son. That coming out of that radio interview. We'll bring you anything else that comes out of that as it happens. Meanwhile, Governor Huckabee, always good to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sandra.
So more on that from Detroit. Breaking news, as Sandra just mentioned there, on John Conyers and his future. Here's the headline. He will not run for re-election. What will his son do? How will the people of Michigan react? More on that. Much a slow walk out of Detroit, Michigan. John Conyers, age 88, says he will retire immediately from his position in the U.S. House of Representatives. Conyers is being treated for a health issue right now. Did an interview with a Detroit radio station moments ago from his hospital room and made the announcement about his future in Congress. I met another woman who came forward accusing Conyers of sexual harassment. And we were told a bit earlier today that, well, Conyers would heed the warning of Nancy Pelosi a week ago when she said it was time for him to go. And she said, I pray for Congressman Conyers. However, the congressman should resign. That was from last Thursday.
After calling her an icon several days before that, backtracking a bit. But now you have it, 88 years old, John Conyers. I'm retiring today. He is endorsing his son, John Conyers the third, I believe, to take his seat in Congress. He told the radio host interviewing him locally there, he takes the allegations in stride. He says it's the game of politics that we're in. His legacy, he said, can't be compromised. This too shall pass. His legacy, he said, will continue through his children.
I say it's a slow walk only because he's been in the headlines for so many days right now, and he stepped down from his post as the Democratic leader on the Senate, on the House Judiciary Committee. So that was really the first move and the first indication that he was starting to yield to some of the pressure that came from his own colleagues on the Democratic side. It's
been a long time coming, and we have been told of multiple announcements. Today was the day we anticipated he would be stepping down, and sure enough, John Conyers announcing, I am retiring today from his hospital room in Detroit. We have a reporter on the ground there that will go to that, listen to that interview, was there. But meanwhile, Bill, this has been coming.
Yes, some of these women who have come forward, some of these allegations go back some time, but the details of their allegations are now public, and that includes a woman who says he put his hand up her skirt and was rubbing her leg in front of a church, in the front row of a church. That allegation hit just hours.
The latest one.
Yeah, just the latest one before the announcement came today, and we'd heard from some of those who work with Conyers that for more than a decade that a cousin of one of the accusers by the name of Marion Brown had reached some sort of confidential settlement with the politician over sexual misconduct.
That was Eliza Grubb. She's the latest to make an allegation against the congressman in an affidavit publicized late Monday. Our reporter on the ground there, Matt Finn, is available to us now. Matt, the latest?
Sandra, I just left the radio station where the local radio host was hosting the congressman, where he just made the announcement, and he continues to deny any of the sexual harassment allegations, primarily that of Marion Brown, saying that they are false, and he does not know where they are coming from. We've been on the ground here in Detroit for a couple days, and there's been a lot of talk and discussion about whether today's announcement would reveal that the congressman is going to formally retire, and he just announced on the radio station here that that is what he intends to do, and that he endorses his son, John Conyers III, to replace his seat in Congress. There's also a lot of local reports here on the ground that the nephew of Congressman John Conyers, Ian Conyers, might also run for his seat. There are plenty of reports already published saying that he will. We have not been able to independently confirm that, although I spoke to the chief of staff for Ian Conyers, and he does not deny those reports. We also spoke to a spokesperson for the family of Congressman John Conyers, who says it's basically going to be a free-for-all, as you can imagine, here in Detroit regarding who is going to run for his seat, and that his wife might decide to run for his seat. Sandra?
Matt, interesting that he weighed in as well on his health and the state of his family, saying his health and his family are excellent.
Yes, you know, we attended a rally for Congressman Conyers yesterday where a large coalition of people who are supporting him, including state, local, and county officials who are urging him not to resign, said that he was still in the hospital and that his condition was unknown. But as we just found out, he remains in the hospital at this hour. Friday, there was a press conference in front of the congressman's house in which his attorney, Mr. Reed, said that he was undergoing some tests and that his doctors wanted to continue for him to undergo tests. And since he is still in the hospital, it would seem like his condition hasn't necessarily improved, although we absolutely do not know the status of Congressman Conyers right now. But he does say that his legacy will live on through his children and that he formally nominates his son to replace him, to replace his seat in Congress. Sandra.
All right, Congressman Conyers retiring as of today. Matt Finn, thank you.
Breaking news there in Detroit. More coming up in a moment. Republicans closer to delivering on massive tax overhaul. The president wants it done by Christmas. Will he get it? Kellyanne Conway's live on the North Lawn next in a moment on that to answer that question and more. Plus, watch this vote on Tuesday. In Alabama, they're picking a new senator in about a week's time. What happens if the embattled Republican Roy Moore wins amid numerous sexual misconduct claims about him? Stay tuned. Back in a moment. From Detroit to New York and into Washington, D.C., here's the reverberation now. The longtime serving Democratic congressman from Detroit, John Conyers, resigning his post at age 88, endorsing his son to assume his seat. We'll see what the voters have to say about that. And what does the White House have to say about this? Kellyanne Conway, counsel to the president, with me now from the North Lawn, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
I've got a whole big list here. Let's start with John Conyers. What's the reaction from the White House?
Let the people of Michigan decide who their next congressman is. That's what we believe in this White House. At the same time, Congressman Conyers was losing support among the leaders in the Democratic Party, among a number of his colleagues. You had Nancy Pelosi, of course, speaking with a forked tongue on the Sunday show. She called him an icon. A couple days later, she said he must resign. And that's just because, I guess, these are allegations they took very seriously, more seriously than they take others, I suppose. But I think that he was losing support among many of his colleagues that previously said they would stand with him. Now, it's not up to John Conyers, the congressman, to nominate his successor. He's endorsing his son. Usually what happens in these states, I'd have to check Michigan law, though, is depending on when the retirement, the resignation comes, as close to the midterms, you have the governor of that state appointing a successor. Sometimes it's a special election. We'll have to look at Michigan law. But people will have to decide who they want in Congress now to represent them, and we'll respect the will of the people.
Let's go to topic number 2, and that is taxes. Last night, a bit of a hiccup last night with conservatives in the House. Are they going to get in the way, do you think, of getting this done?
They've been great. They've been wonderful, and the president has established a really healthy and ongoing conversation and relationship with all of the Republicans in the House and Senate at one time or another, and he and the vice president have leaned all the way into this process, and yesterday was no exception. We have a couple things going on in December. One is we're on the verge of passing historic tax cuts for employers, for businesses, and for families and for individuals. But we also have to keep funding the government, and we certainly hope, and I know there's conservatives in the House hope, Bill, that the Democrats will not stand in the way of keeping the government function, won't shut it down for petty partisan reasons, and will keep the government going. We'll get the funding that we need to the military, for example.
Topic number 3, I want to go back to over the weekend, okay? The tweet that came from the president's account with regard to the FBI said the following with regard to General Flynn. I had to fire General Flynn, he writes, because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He had pled guilty to those lies. It is a shame because his actions during the transition were lawful, there was nothing to hide. Now we understand the attorney John Dowd wrote that. First of all, is that true? And second, why make that statement?
John Dowd said that he wrote the tweet. He said he's out of the tweeting business now. It's the first tweet he's ever written for the president. And I think the president himself has talked before that tweet and after that tweet quite extensively on the matter, and we should look at the full measure of what he has said. He has said that he was asked, I was standing right there when he was asked on the South Lawn on Saturday morning before we took off for New York by the press pool. He said, they asked, are you worried about yesterday? And he said, no, there was no collusion. There's absolutely no collusion, so we're, quote, happy about that. He keeps saying that. And that is exactly what the mainstream media, who has been in lather about Russia, 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 not America, 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 for a year now. That's what they've been focused on. Now they're changing their tune to other charges. But the president has also said, that we need an FBI that's objective, and he's very concerned to think that any type of investigation was compromised. The revelation that an FBI agent had to be reassigned or taken out of this particular investigation because he was anti-Trump in his text and had interviewed General Flynn and was more favorable toward Hillary Clinton when she was being questioned. That's very troubling for any American who knows justice should be blind and our FBI should be independent.
I've talked to a lot of legal analysts over the past 5 days. Was that tweet a defense on behalf of the president and his attorney?
That tweet was his attorney expressing, from, I suppose, a legal perspective, what they wanted to convey, which is that reminding everybody that General Flynn lied to the FBI, lied to the vice president. But the president has also since said, and I think it's very important for everyone to note this, he said as recently as yesterday that General Flynn was treated very unfairly, his career and his life ruined, and that Hillary Clinton got off with very little scrutiny or punishment. That's the president's point of view, and he has every right to express it. So I think we should always, for everyone, take the full measure of the comments. But yeah. I would defer to what the president's counsel, what his lawyer, Mr. Dowd, has said, which is that he wrote the tweet.
Based on your last answer, not that one, the one previously, you think the White House believes the FBI has a credibility problem, correct?
No, I didn't say that. There are many, many men and women at the FBI, some recently there, some who have been there for many, many years, if not decades, I'm sure, who are law-abiding and upstanding men and women who do their job well every single day. That's my prevailing view at all of these agencies and departments. There's no question about it. And What I'm saying is the recent revelations, and we get new facts about that particular agent every day now. These new revelations that he was taken off that investigation in the summer because perhaps the investigation was compromised, that he was sending out anti-Trump tweets. This is the information we've seen, as you've seen. We're always concerned about questions of objectivity, and we always want investigations to be impartial. Okay. So that is a going principle that I hope, would cover any presidency and any investigation by the FBI. The new FBI director, Mr. Wray, was recently confirmed, and the president did a very long and deep search for Mr. Comey's replacement. And in Mr. Wray, we are confident that the FBI is tapping into the considerable intelligence and devotion, dedication, and professionalism of the men and women who work at the FBI.
Last topic here. I got to squeeze this in quickly. There's a big vote in Alabama on Tuesday. Mitt Romney tweeted this just yesterday. Roy Moore in the U.S. Senate would be a stain on the GOP and on the nation. Lee Corfman and other victims are courageous heroes. No vote, no majority is worth losing our honor, our integrity, end quote. The president talked to Roy Moore yesterday. What'd you think of Mitt Romney's comment?
I was wondering what Mitt Romney was doing while the president and Senator Hatch and others were in Utah. Now I know. He's welcome to his opinion. This president has made clear that he does not want Doug Jones in the Senate, that it would be a sneak attack of a liberal vote, a vote against the shared agenda of tax cuts and the Second Amendment.
Does he think Roy Moore would be a stain or not on the GOP?
Well, you know what? The president spoke with Roy Moore yesterday, and he has given him his endorsement. I see overnight the RNC either is or is considering going back in and providing the resources that they generally provide Republican nominees. It's very clear now that Mr. Moore is not stepping aside. He is the candidate. He's on the ballot. The election is in 1 week. And that the president has stated, he's made statements on this very clearly, and I would refer you to the president's own public statements, Bill. Everything he has said about Roy Moore is there for everyone to see.
Okay.
And then we'll see. We'll let the people, but the most important thing is to let the people of Alabama decide their election. Even Leader McConnell has come around to that opinion and expressed it on a Sunday show this weekend.
I'm well out of time, but thank you for yours.
Thank you.
Kellyanne Conway from the White House. Thanks.
A bombshell announcement as Congressman John Conyers faces sexual harassment allegations. Congressman Conyers announcing his retirement, endorsing his son to replace him just a short time ago. Our panel weighs in on that and much more.